Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Inside Austin's Agenda. I'm your host, Grace Reader. Today I'm joined by Austin City Council member Zoe Qadri. Thank you for making the time to do this. So unfortunately, we had a tragic shooting happen in your district over the weekend. First and foremost, can you just talk about how you heard about what happened on 6th Street and kind of what your first steps were?
Yeah, I mean, once again, want to frame how horrific of a shooting this was. The mass shooting, worst mass shooting in over 6 decades. Countless lives lost. Folks are still, reeling in the hospital recovering. And then just the folks that have to deal with this emotional trauma for the rest of their lives. It happened, I believe, at Sunday around 2 a.m., shortly after I started getting calls from folks on my team and, talked to Chief Davis and talked to the mayors. And that's how I kind of started hearing about it. And I think our first reaction as an office was, how can we be helpful? A lot of it was just information gathering from, APD and EMS and FBI and talking to the mayor's team. And then a lot of it was just, okay, what is the need and what can we do? And obviously want to thank EMS and APD. I mean, they did. I mean, all of them are heroes. I mean, the response time being what it was, and I mean the countless lives that were saved. That the CASMED program, which I think has been highlighted in several news articles, as well as the Downtown Area Command, and then just like I said, having those in place and EMS and APD being there as fast as they were. I mean, countless lives saved. But outside of the policy end of it, we're like, where can we be helpful? And one thing that we've done as an office is the blood drive. There was a blood drive on Monday at City Hall. So thankful for everyone that we were able to put it together as fast as we were. I think 123 folks came out, and I think 91 were able to donate. There's always folks that aren't able to donate for one reason or another. But there were so many folks that actually came out that they had to stop taking in donors because there was just not the capacity. Which is a beautiful thing in terms of Austinites coming together and helping one another and taking care of one another. But I think the relief and kind of continues. I know there's several GoFundMes for some of the victims. I would encourage folks to check that out. And I also know there's a lot of folks who need mental health help just because of how traumatic that was. I was at UT yesterday during the vigil in front of the tower, and you could see the pain in the community. And I think you could still see the pain even outside of the university. I think this has really shaken the community and the sense of safety that I think all of us are accustomed to. And mass shootings or shootings of any kind are horrific, but at this scale, when you see it happen in the news and it happens in some other city or state, at least personally, I'm like, that could never happen here. And the fact that it happened here, I think it's really shaken a lot of folks.
Can you talk about communication, when something to this magnitude, and especially when law enforcement are looking at potential terrorism, they bring in the FBI. What has the communication federally and with the city looked like so far?
Yeah, so I think once there was, and I don't want to speak to, I guess the technical terms that have come up around, the nexus of terrorism. I know it's an ongoing investigation, but I think once I guess APD, felt like there was something larger than just a mass shooting, which in itself is a horrific thing. That's when they passed off the case to the FBI, which there's still communication there. So I think the FBI is, my understanding, is kind of leading the investigation in tandem with APD, and then when the information comes down, at least when I hear it, it's from conversations with Chief Davis.
Have you all felt like the communication has been good there, like you're getting the information that you need from the FBI?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an ongoing investigation, but I think anytime any information becomes available, I mean, we're able to receive it, and if we're able to publicly talk, there's certain things that until the investigation's concluded, it's not something you might publicly say, but I think once public information that we could publicly tell people, we're able to tell our constituents in the community.
We expect body camera footage to come out today from some of those first responders that you mentioned who were there within a minute. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, you mentioned those 2 programs, the programs that got first responders, law enforcement, EMS there so quickly. Can you talk about what those programs are?
Yeah, so there was both programs that were brought forward during the budget cycles. So one was the Downtown Area Command Center. It was an item that the mayor brought forward, Mayor Watson, our office had worked with them on the item, and that was just to have a central command center with fire, EMS, and police, in our downtown area. And then CASMED was a program that our office had brought forward during the budget for honestly situations like this, right? I mean, we brought it forward because we want to make sure that the city was ready. There's collaboration between EMS and APD where they can work in tandem and get there in tandem. And we really wanted to make sure we got it through. Obviously, a program that I wish we never had to actually use. But the fact that we were able to pass it during the budget and it was in place, that's how you saw, APD and EMS work so in sync together and be properly staffed and resourced. So those are the two programs.
Have you all started having conversations about anything further that can be done, any bulking up of those programs moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had, by all accounts, the 57-second is something that was even better than national standards. I think the one thing that comes top of mind that I think about as it relates to this crisis, but even any other type of crisis, large or small, is the video that came out around the Waymo. It's my understanding with Chief Leopard's from EMS that didn't affect the response time, the way that the Waymo was positioned. That being said, what if, hypothetically, the Waymo was blocking the route, right? What if there were several Waymos? So that's something that I want to discuss with folks at Waymo, and also as the Vice Chair of Mobility, a conversation that I want to have on the Mobility Committee, because I think, hats off and to EMS and APD. I think they went above and beyond, and I thank them so much. But it's things that could have been out of our control, like the Waymo instance, that could have caused. A second or two could have made the difference between 3, 4, 5 other people dying. So I don't want that to ever be a thing.
What kind of action could you all take? What kind of conversations will you have with Waymo?
So when it comes to, robot taxis, and this has been highlighted and documented before, as a city we can't regulate them, but that doesn't mean we can't put pressure on them. That also doesn't mean that we can't work with our state, legislators to be our voices and to fight on what can and can't be done. So I think that's the hope, right? Like we'll raise our voices, the concerns. Obviously, it's a very public, viral video of the Waymo, and I think Waymo, should and would take that seriously. And I think having folks at the state also be an advocate and push for better, something that I also hope.
What kind of reviews will be done after the fact? We're hearing about the response from first responders, and we're going to see some of what their first response was. But what kind of reviews or after action reports, or what can we expect from the city in terms of just making sure that everything that happened in the aftermath was how it should have been, or if there's any ways it could be better?
Yeah, I think that's all going to come from folks at PD, so I can't really speak of that, but. Right now it's just about information gathering and making sure we have everything else. Like I said, continuing ongoing investigation. But I think another thing that became clear is that the shooter had a history of domestic violence. My understanding from the presser that happened on Tuesday that he did obtain the guns legally, but that still begs the question: if this person has a history of domestic violence, why is he being able to still have these guns even legally? I think to me that's the biggest red flag. But yeah, in terms of, I can't speak until I think all the dust is kind of settled, but from my understanding, from everything that I've seen through these programs, through APD and EMS, the response time, just everything that they did on the floor, on the ground, it all looks like, like I said, I have nothing but, these folks were heroes. But obviously I wasn't on the ground. Body camera footage comes out at noon. APD, EMS might have other comments on, hey, this is what happened. This is what could have, happened. This is what we could look at. But I'm not here. I can't speak on that. I wasn't on the ground, and I said, for everything that I've heard, they did great.
You talked about being at the vigil this week. Can you talk about what is needed now, what you're seeing in terms of, what folks are needing?
I think I think anytime any tragedy hits a community, it doesn't get better overnight. This happened, and I think people almost, I don't want to say people forget, but it happened on Sunday. Today's only Thursday, and I remember it being Monday when we were doing the blood drive, and there were folks lining up, and I was like, oh my God, this shooting happened yesterday. So I think through time, I think there's folks need to heal. I think for some folks that might, the time varies, right? And there's no like magic formula on what that looks like. And I think, the city has a victim crisis, center open. I know UT is doing a lot of work around mental health care. I think, folks have been reaching out to our office and we've been disseminating that information. We worked with We Are Blood, and I know there's like GoFundMe's for some of the victims. So, I mean, I don't think there's just one thing to do to help people, right? I think people need mental health, people might need financial help, people might need emotional support, might need blood. So, I think the relief and the recovery is ongoing.
I want to make sure that I pose this question with, not getting ahead of the FBI and that they are still working to put together a motive. And there's been a lot of chatter online about what the intentions here might have been. But I wonder if you all are also, no worries, looking at safety for religious communities and making sure that there is no unjust retaliation against religious communities in our city.
Sure. So I talked to Chief Davis about that on Sunday, and we've had folks from different religious communities, different religious centers in district and even outside of district reach out about having a patrol. So we've been working with those centers and APD and making sure that there's a proper patrol.
Is there anything that they have reached out in particular about, or is it really just sort of concern about any backlash?
I think it's just concern about any backlash. There haven't been any, at least not what's been communicated to me, any threats to the centers, but I think there's just been a lot of fear about, and there's also unfortunately a lot of online chatter on certain social media platforms that are not threatening but not welcoming, and I think folks see that and they just feel, they tense up. Some folks are at prayers all day, or they're out there for extended periods of time at night and they feel very vulnerable. So they've reached out to our office. We've been working with APD on that.
What have you seen in terms of, that you talked about the blood drive and the response that you all had to turn people away because so many people came out to help. You were at the vigil. Can you talk about just Austin's response, how much love you have seen in the aftermath?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Austin's a city of almost 1 million people. It's one of the largest cities in the country, but it still has this almost small town. I say this as someone who grew up in a small town feel, where everyone kind of knows everyone cares for everyone, they love one another, and when something wrong happens, they all kind of protect one another. And I think that's what we've seen, right? Everything from the vigil and the amount of folks that were there. I don't want to misconstrue how many folks. It looked like it was like well over 1,000 in front of the tower last night. I know there have been other vigils throughout the city. The blood drive is another example of how many folks just came out, and just everything we've been seeing from the amount of money that's been raised from GoFundMe's to people giving their time and energy to around mental health help. So I think that just speaks to who we are as Austinites. I think when something bad happens, we're there for one another.
Well, is there anything else tied to the shooting that you want to talk about, or you think people need to know where we are right now?
No, I think one thing that has come up, and a question that's come up, and Chief Davis answered it on Tuesday, is that APD feels like they're prepared for the upcoming festival season with South by Southwest, starting in just a few short days. And I think they have many things in place. So but my sole takeaway, regardless of the shooting happened or not, is if you see something, say something, and for folks to always be vigilant. We live in a very chaotic time, and I think it's important to just be aware and make sure that we take care of one another.
Well, Councilmember, I really appreciate you having this conversation.
Great, thank you.